Hello and welcome to this edition of the Our Future, Our Voice NI campaign, leading the conversation for COP26. In this edition, we're going to be focusing on the views of younger people and what relevance they have to the COP26 conference and the things that they want to see from this. We'll also have some asks for some policymakers as well, so make sure you stay tuned for that. Thank you very much for joining us to go through some of the big issues that our leaders are facing and why the environment and the climate emergency is so important to them. We have joining us from India, Ajay Mittal, and we have Emer Rafferty joining us right here from Northern Ireland. Both are part of the 30 Under 30 campaign, which is from the North American Association for Environmental Education. So first of all, can I just say congratulations to you both for getting such prestigious recognition. And the two of you are hyper active on the issue of the climate emergency and climate change. So I just want to start off with you, Emer. Can you tell us a wee bit about why you got involved in tackling the climate emergency and what really motivates you on this issue?
I would say that I don't know how we could not be motivated by it. You know, it's our lives, it's our home, it's our jobs, our food, the air that we breathe. It's our future. So if that's not enough motivation, I don't know what is. But it's you're kind of driven by a few factors. It's the fear factor, but it's also the thought of, if we don't do this, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to our future generations? But it is our generation after all. Like, we're going to be facing this too. So you kind of do get driven by fear. But then you can't just have fear. You need some hope. You need the ambition in there too. And a lot of young people have that. So as I say, it's hard not to be motivated when it comes to this topic.
Okay, Ajay, again, reading your profile, I know you're very active. What was it that spoke to you and got you really involved in this issue?
Yeah, so as Emer also pointed out, I think what would not be more motivating, or this fear of the kind of crisis that we are going through is really overwhelming. And what could be more meaningful for a generation like us who is facing the impacts of climate crisis, and some of this we are not entirely responsible for. And we all know that we could be the last generation who could do something about this. And my primary motivation has been public health. I've been volunteering for years on public health, and when I realized the issue of air pollution, which kills more people than AIDS, malaria, and tuberculosis combined, it really shook me up. And I thought this is something which I need to work on, because it affects everyone. And this is an issue which is most important to every creature on this planet. So what could be more important to work on an issue which can impact not just human beings, but every sentient being on this earth?
Yeah, and one thing that really comes across from both your actions and activities, and again, I would encourage anyone listening to both go check out Emer and Ajay's profiles on the NAAEE website. Emer, you've been active. I mean, you're well recognizable to us, and I know you've been out and about being active in your own local community as well, and I know we've spoken before about that. In terms of the initiatives that you're involved in, what is it that you've picked up about what people like you can do? Because a couple of people may be listening to this going, well, you know, well, that's good for them, but for other people, how can they get involved and do what you're doing?
Yeah, there's always an opportunity out there. It's kind of just going out and looking for it. And I understand some people could feel like, well, what could I do as a young person? But I feel like young people have the passion, and the politicians, the adults, they have the power. So you need both. You need them both in hand. And by working together, we can make amazing things happen. So young people, we can, of course, as a human being, you do your part. But it's also putting pressure on the politicians, the big corporations, the big polluters that are causing massive damage. And that is a role that we have to play as young people, to put pressure on them and say, enough is enough. This can't go on any longer. So there's always something that you can do, and we should want to do it. This is, as I say, this is our futures that we're talking about. It's not just something we can just throw aside and say, oh, sure, we'll just leave it. This is important. This is vital. So there are organisations I would recommend. Also, Wildlife have been amazing. That's who I've been with, and they've provided so many opportunities. Global Action Plan in the UK, Keeping Ireland Beautiful is brilliant. Live Here, Love Here. Loads of organisations. And what I have found along the way is that it's those individuals in these organisations that inspire me, that motivate me to keep going. It's not the fancy people in these fancy suits that inspire me or motivate me or empower me. It's the ordinary people taking important action. And I think that's important to recognise. You want to surround yourself with positive, ambitious people. And that's exactly what you could do if you join some organisations.
Very well put, Emer. Ajay, I know you've taken action locally. I know you've got a clean air initiative, and I know that you're taking lots of action in your local community as well. Could you just tell us a wee bit about the work that you are doing, and again, what impact you're seeing that's having in your local community?
Yeah, right, David. So we started a citizen movement for clean air after we realized how serious the issue of clean air is and how people are not aware about the seriousness of the issue. There were not a lot of air quality monitors which are showing real-time data. People were not aware about the health impacts of air pollution. So we started a campaign to start monitoring the air, communicating it through media, engaging citizens through street theater, doing public engagements like walks, cycling, events, going to the parks and talking to people, all of this. And we realized from their perception that they understand the air quality could be bad, but it's not as serious. And we understand the need for personalizing that communication. So we engaged with us doctors who would come out and say about the health consequences of air pollution. That's when people started relating more to air pollution. So air pollution appears to be an abstract issue otherwise. It's an invisible issue. So we had to make communication was very difficult for this. So we used when doctors would come up and wear those coats and communicate to people, they would hear more rather than us talking about it. So then we saw a better level of citizen engagement. We broke down the issue into issue of transport, waste, and greening the city and all those factors. And we asked people to choose the sector that interests them and start taking action at their own level. They can start composting at home, or they can choose to use public transport, choose to use cycling. And once they get involved personally, they hold others accountable, which includes the authorities, which includes people around them, which includes people in their neighborhood, in the organization, so that there is a collective responsibility developed for the citizens. So that was something we took as our approach, and it seems to work, this thing. And to sustain those, I think what is important is, again, go back to schools, because that's where we saw the most response. I think the younger people are more willing to hear, and that's where I would bet my hopes on, rather than talking to people who are in their 40s, 50s, than talking to children.
Okay, and you've raised so many great issues in there, Emer. Environmental education, it really is key here. And again, when we did a previous session with people, one or two of the panelists were saying, they wish they knew more when they were in school. They wish they got taught more and exposed more to this. And I know there are some programs out there, I mean, like our very own Eco Schools program. But Emer, for you, would you like to see things like that extended in schools? Would you like to see a greater emphasis on environmental? I mean, I know countries like Taiwan mandate environmental education in their schools. Would you like to see more initiatives like that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, what's holding us back? Like, it's not a massive job to do. But we're treating it like this is an impossible task. Of course, environmental education is so important, and you mentioned it perfectly, Ajay. It's very hard for people to have a connection to nature, to the environment, if you're never taught about it, if you're never learned to love it. And I always wonder if Boris Johnson or if Donald Trump, whenever they were in primary school or high school, if they had been taught environmental education, would they have a different perspective now? Would they be doing more now? And we need to put it in that sort of way. But what's the long-term effect of environmental education? It's an environmentally cautious human being, and that's what we need more of, because obviously we don't have that at the minute. So, and it's about taking action, but it's also about appreciating, about loving where we live, and about taking care of it, because it has taken care of us for so long, and it's just recently that it just can't do it anymore because we've been neglecting it. So in my experience, I have very, very poor environmental learning in my whole since I was age 4 up to now. And any knowledge that I gained was kind of out of my own will to go and look for it. And that shouldn't be the case, because if you don't have that will, then that's where the problems have become, because you never find out about it. So I do believe that environmental education is key, and we need to treat it not as big of an issue as it really is, because if we can learn about the history of our world, we can also learn about the future of it.
Okay, fantastic. Ajay, you mentioned there about, and this is a big issue for younger people, transport, getting around, particularly in big cities or even in rural parts of the country. And again, it'd be interesting to get your take on India. Obviously, Northern Ireland is just a population of 1.9 million people, and I appreciate there are some Indian cities that have more people than our entire population combined. What for you are you seeing? Again, share some of your experiences with your initiative on transport, trying to get people onto it, but more important, getting better connectivity to make public transport more viable.
Yeah, so my city actually has a bigger opportunity. Although we have a lot of people, there is still 70% people use public transport, prefer public transport. We have a very good variety of public transport options. But what is happening is that the current policies kind of encourage more cars on the streets. So that needs to change. We need more spaces to promote active transport, more walking, more cycling, and work towards decarbonizing our transport system. If you look at some of the electric vehicle policies that are coming through, it's very aggressive, it's very progressive, but they don't have one factor missing, which is that they still promote adoption of more cars. So it doesn't work like that. Like if we still move to an electric vehicle, but we have more cars than it was earlier, it would still be a disaster. So we need a more, that's where environmental education also comes in play, where we teach young people and make them understand the value of active transports and how to live a more responsible life. I think responsible production and consumption, that SDG is to be more importantly understood by people, and people need to be more kind of responsible in their ways of how they are living their lifestyles. I think that's the core. So I think in terms of transport, there are a lot of challenges. Moving to EV is something which we are going to see very aggressive in India, is what policy shows us. In the next decade, we are going to see a huge rise of electric vehicles, but that should not lead us to more cars on the streets. I think that's one. And second is, if all of these EVs are still being powered by fossil fuels, the power coming this thing, they just kind of export the pollution out of the city, but it doesn't solve the problem. So as aggressively we move towards adoption of electric vehicles, we should be more aggressive with decarbonizing that source of power, because that's where the clean air lies. It's not after you release something, you trap it, or you shift the source of emissions. It has to be, the source has to change. That's the move towards clean transport. And also moving to cleaner transport or cleaner power should not mean we consume more power. We should be more responsible. We should optimize our resources. That's the A thing for me.
Yeah, and it's amazing how many of the issues just cross-cut, and we've got similar issues over here. And this leads me on to my next question. Obviously, this is an international problem, and Emer, I want to come to you on this. COP26 again. We saw the British Prime Minister the other day when he was holding a press conference talking about, bringing these world leaders together and the importance of doing that. What is it that you're looking to see from COP26? What is it you want to see world leaders coming out and saying in the days and weeks after the conference takes place?
It's not so much what I want to hear them say, it's what I want to see them do. That's what everybody wants, and that's what we're ranting on about all this time. I want to see integrity and honesty and transparency. I think that's what we are lacking right now from politicians. It's very hard to trust people whenever they say one thing and do another. So that's one major thing that I want to see come out of COP26. I'm going over as a young reporter, and I am really looking to look out for the ordinary people taking big action, and because it's those people that empower me and inspire me, not so much the politicians. So of course I want to hear what the politicians have to say for themselves, and what's going to happen in the future. But it's also the ordinary people like ourselves that are taking action. That's the people that I want to reach out to, because if we need to hear those good news stories, and if we don't, it's just going to consume us and we're going to just get so overwhelmed by it all. We need to know that there's other people like ourselves who care just as much as we do. So yes, a major thing would be integrity, also a bit of ambition. We need more ambition in there. And I also want to see politicians getting 3 Ps right. And I always talk about this: getting policy, getting practice, and pledge all at the same level. A lot of the time, pledge is well up here, the policies below it, and then the practice is even lower. If we can get these all on the same level, that'll make big things happen.
Okay, Emer, that's very well put. Ajay, what is it you're looking to see from COP26? What is it you would like to see the Indian government and governments around the world coming back and saying, yes, we're going to do and take action on this?
Yeah, I think MV has perfectly put everything this thing. It's all about action. And really, we don't want to hear what they're going to do in next 10 years, and 20 years, and 30 years now. What they are doing now and how much they are backing it with resources. I think that's very important, because as she pointed out over the 3 Ps, I think she's perfectly put up the issue is that I'm not going to be convinced with anything that politicians say, because we have seen them kind of making big promises and never delivering on them. And I think politicians think on a very, very short term. They come for short time. They have very immediate issues that concern them. So I really want more action on the ground. And I think they have a role to play also to educate the public on those issues, because some of the times the masses issues are still far from environmental issues. I think that's something which should be on their agenda as well, to educate more people on the issues of climate and take people together, because there's very little they can achieve through just policies if there is no public participation. I think that's where they have to do. And lastly, I would say is that a lot of politicians and leaders have been forced to give spaces to the youth, but those spaces have become just talks. They have not let them act on those things. It's just a good to factor to have a youth at a conference or have a forum where you have a few youth sitting around, but they hardly, you just hear them, you don't act on them. I think that's where the problem is. I think you have to give more spaces for youth to act. You have to use the energy of the youth because this is they are the primary stakeholders. Whatever these issues are, it's going to impact them most. And the way they can think, you cannot, because you don't have that equal amount of stake. So it's their future. It's their onus that is more missing. So you have to involve them into more action.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's so well put as well, guys. I mean, we're talking about how you engage with policymakers, so we want to give you a bit of an opportunity to do that right now, and we want to give you a chance to actually make those asks of a policymaker and someone who could maybe influence that a wee bit. So we've got some asks for you for our Minister for Infrastructure, who looks after transport and all those different things. We've already spoken to her for this series, but I'm going to go to you, Emer, as someone who lives in this community, but also a voter as well. I know you'll be active at the elections next May, I'm sure, pressing these issues. Emer, what would your ask be for the minister?
My ask would be that whatever is holding you back, holding the sector back, holding the government back, to let it go, put it behind you. And I would call on you to be able to say, we are taking action instead of we need to take action. That's the thing politicians are very good at saying. We need to. And I would call on you to prove that your words are being put into action, that what you say is true, and what you're saying, you mean it. So that's what I would call on the minister.
Okay, thank you very much for that, Emer. Ajay, what ask would you want from our minister? Even though we're a long way away, but however, from where we are, but however, this is a global problem. What happens here impacts other countries. So, Ajay, what would your ask be of our minister?
My appeal to the honourable minister is that I heard she has proposed to set up a youth advisory group. I would suggest she makes it a more of youth action group and selects the champions of environment from her constituency and back them with resources, back them with a little bit of authority and power to do what they are doing, allow them some freedom to make real action happen, and support them, encourage the youth to take up this issue and take action. I think that's what I would want her to do. And secondly, I would also want any city, any institutions and leaders from the developing world to also co-develop cities from the developing world, because as you said, it's an issue which is doesn't have any geographical boundaries, and there is a challenge of resources for cities in the developing world to keep pace with this kind of issue. So there is something which is an hand-holding that needs to be there between two cities. I think if we pair up a city from the developing world and from the developed world to work together, there is a lot we can learn from each other, and there is a lot which we can achieve for making our world more sustainable.
Yeah, and that's a great point about how we get action from COP. A lot of the industrialized countries asking a lot from some of the developing countries as well. Guys, thank you so very much. This has been such a fascinating topic. And again, congratulations on the work that you're doing. Many congratulations on getting the recognition that you're getting. 30 under 30. I'll be interested to see what you guys are up to by the time you're 40. I'm sure there's many future policymakers sitting on this conversation as well. Ajay Mittal joined us all the way from India. Emer Rafferty from Northern Ireland. Thank you very much for your time today. If you want to comment on anything you've heard Ajay or Emer say, please drop it in the comment section below. In the meantime, that just leaves me to say thank you very much for tuning in to this edition of Our Future, Our Voice. So thank you for watching.